The 1990s were filled with a ton of iconic alien movies when it came to the landmark franchises. Of course, we had the birth of everybody's favorite FBI team with Scully and Mulder from the X-Files, as well as some pretty controversial sequels like Alien 3. But there was also a ton of other extraterrestrial stuff out there making a name for itself. Movies like Fire in the Sky, Predator 2, and Independence Day were coming out. Then you've got Mars Attacks, Men in Black, Starship Troopers. It was all around just a great time for the genre. But not all of these movies would become household names. And one of them I happened to stumble upon out of boredom recently.
I said...
Deadly Instincts is a 1997 comedic science fiction horror film directed by Paul Matthews. It stars Todd Jensen, Samantha Womack, and Kadambra Simmons as Space Girl. The movie starts off with this really cheesy CGI title credit sequence flying through space, and while I'm sure this probably looked great in the editing bay back in the late 90s, it hasn't really aged well at all. Everything starts to kick off when a comet slams into the planet and a disfigured woman is revealed to have been trapped inside. Oh, and by the way, she's crash landed with a gigantic reptilian alien creature brought to life by a kind of crazy special effects suit that starts to emerge from the wreckage and terrorize the town. Deadly Instinct's primary baddie happens to be this giant monster, which kind of looks like a combination of the Predator body, only with some more alien-like facial features from the Sigourney Weaver movies. I could totally see this being an abandoned concept for one of those clones from Resurrection, and as far as the old Space Girl goes, this chick looks like she's straight out of an episode of Power Rangers, complete with an outer space outfit and slight facial scarring that gives her an ominous backstory that will later be explored in the actual plot.
Where'd you get these scars? What are you doing here? Where'd you come from?
I was abducted.
Speaking of the plot, the best way I can describe this movie is like if 1997's The Relic, which was actually written by the people who later worked on the newer Planet of the Apes trilogy and the first Jurassic World, by the way, was mixed with 1995 Species, which I recently talked about on the channel. In fact, the alternate title of this movie was Breeders, and with a tagline like, "It's time to pray," you know you're in for some Roger Corman level cheese. The movie isn't exactly what I'd call very high budget, and the characters are kind of all over the place and unbelievable at times. In fact, I will be honest with y'all, and this is kind of the trashy movie type that I don't really enjoy watching anymore these days, and that says a lot due to my Godzilla fan card being in use. So it does have a really cool special effects suit, and it's kind of a throwback to the 1970s style exploitation films, only given a 90s treatment at a time in which the genre was beginning to get a little more fame with the advent of advanced animatronic effects and CGI. The best thing the film has going for it is the look of the monster. While this thing doesn't exactly look like the most cutting edge and aggressive thing you've ever seen, it is designed fairly well, and I actually think good creature design goes a long way as far as recognition is concerned. As for the human cast, look, they all need to repent and go to church. I just can't get into the more exploitation style films anymore, man. I'm sorry. Statistically, this just doesn't bode well for people like that, and we get to see that in real time when everyone ends up getting killed in variously crazy ways in the film.
I think he's using these things to control his victims.
Ironically, I think my favorite character happens to be Space Girl, actually, because at the very least, she comes with a tragic story of someone forever bound to the space monster that goes after people and tries to conquer the world. She's kind of like a pawn for the monster to use in getting new victims, and she seems to really have this go-go Power Rangers level of backstory and costume design about her that I thought was kind of fun. The whole thing may be redundant and very been there, done that, but with a good monster and a silly plot, that's clearly trying to be similar to Species, by the way, it's hard to outright hate this thing.
You should be more careful. Riley?
The whole movie has this kind of lowbrow tone, which is weird. I really don't like it. I'll get into that later, but it's also got this campy design aesthetic, which is funny because, again, it feels like something very much goofy and almost like Batman and Robin at times.
Impressive.
The costume designs, the alien creature, all of that. It's a very strange comparison to make because it also copies scenes directly from James Cameron's Aliens, and it's unmistakably copying them, by the way. Especially one scene where a whole bunch of police officers are down in the sewers. It's kind of like the scene with the Marines and the Xenomorphs in the second Alien film. Or better yet, something straight out of the Relic. The whole thing is clearly an homage to 1970s monster movies, and it really does feel like that. There's this very strange subplot where a whole bunch of girls get crystals on them and they're like controlled by the monster. Yeah, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little creepy with some of the plot. I don't really like it at all, actually, and it's been lampooned on Riff Tracks before. It's definitely a low budget production with most of the money going towards the alien, but it's strange, man. I can't lie. The space girl, probably the best thing in the movie, and I don't even mean just because of its campy levels. She's probably the most interesting character, and everything else is it's kind of trashy, guys, not gonna lie.
He'll hypnotize you! Don't look in his eyes!
Deadly Instincts came out in 1997, and from my understanding, it didn't get a theatrical release at all, but I have to be real with you guys and say that some of the information surrounding this film is a little sketchy to get the full details on, and I'm not sure if people are being honest. For example, some people are saying that this movie was a remake of the 80s film called Breeders, which this movie was also called, but I'm not so sure I believe that. I don't know if that's true. There isn't really much info on that information, by the way, at all out there. It uses some kind of wacky sound effects that you might recognize, and all in all, this seems to be a forgotten alien film from the 90s that not too many people got a chance to see, and I don't really think anybody talks about it at all. So bottom line, cool monster, fun space girl character, and a plot that's more or less been done a million times before. But hey, out of curiosity, what kind of alien monster movies do you guys recommend I cover next? I've been dying to tackle Sigourney Weaver's franchise in full with a super deep dive into each entry because I love those movies. I really want to go into them, but I want to see if there's some more underrated stuff out there that you all would recommend. Other than that, there's some certain giant monster movies from the 90s, and even before that I want to get into, particularly of the dinosaur-looking variety. But as for Deadly Instincts, Power Rangers in space meets Species, only on a very low budget with the plot of the Relic and as a Roger Corman exploitation film. Yeah, it kind of sums everything up, but hey, whatever your own thoughts and opinions on both this movie and these questions I've asked you guys happen to be, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below.